Uh,
All right, we're already
Mine
have.
is water.
All right, thanks for joining everybody. It's John Jay, and we're talking about some. I think it's interesting. I mean, talking about cryptos tonight's July 24th, and a lot of this content you'll find at aceofcoins.club. I've got different video series, and I add content there once in a while, and when things are important, and then sometimes I'll take like a call like this, and I break it apart into several. In fact, Jim, I got to send you the other one we just did. It's 4 parts. I just got to give you some instruction on that one. But anyways, that's what I do. So I like to like make general commentary on subjects that are important to people that we care about. But then I'll have more detail and technical documents maybe and other tools available in the video series. So I'm not very organized when I publish the video in the series. So what happens is people just go binge watch all the videos. So I don't know how I'm going to label stuff. Sometimes I kind of lump them together, part one and part two. But anyways, it's all there at aceofcoins.club. And then people want to talk to me. So I have aceofcoins.com where you can schedule a time. And then I have an order form that I like to use the PDF order form. I mean, it's low tech. And I mean, I could use a merchant account, but I like to use the PDF and the ACH processing. But what I do there is I have a consulting package. And in there, I'm usually recommending use a limited liability company, right? So if you go to aceofcoins.com and you get the consulting package, I'm not selling you an LLC. I'm providing consulting. And yeah, we're going to use an LLC or two, among other things. With that may come a quit claim deed because we want to retitle some property. Maybe we're going to strip some equity. I'm going to create a legal document for that. So there's a lot of things that go with it. And I bring that in, and that's part of my consulting package. But tonight I wanted to cover this. Uh, Finally, they made it. This IRS Form 1099-DA. Dun, dun, dun. Digital assets, right? 1099, that scares
You
people.
know it's real when they make a form about it.
Yeah, they had made a whole form. I mean, look, you know what they have to do to do this, right? It takes like 3 years. The IRS has to publish something about what it wants to do in the Federal Register, and then leave it there so people can make comments on it. And usually, like 1,500 people make comments, and they're usually lame because they're a bunch of lawyers and they have nothing better to do. But then the rest of us, we're busy out working in the real world, and we don't see that stuff until it pipes its way into the commentary with all the lawyers online that want to scare you, right? Oh no, it's a new 1099 form, run for your life. So I got a list of those calls this week, and I wanted to cover all that. And then I wanted to look at this. I love they call this the Genius Act. What the heck does this mean? So it means
They always do the
guiding,
opposite, so it must be idiot.
yeah, guiding and establishing national innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act, the Genius Act. So this is the beginnings now. I've been saying since 2009, since people talking about Bitcoin, I keep telling them up until I can't say it anymore, that there has been no new law regarding cryptos whatsoever. The IRS simply defined it as property. Thank you very much, IRS. And then the SEC does have a say in there in some aspects of it because of the way it's used. In some cases, it could be used only as a security or it's property, but if it's being used as a security, the SEC might have something to say about it. So that's how that plays in there. But I just like how the IRS defines it as property. And so I want to get into what's going on with this Genius Act. I think it's very helpful. I like it. I like it. And then I want to get into the DA. I'm going to go into all the details here and all the fields and data they're having collected on this form. So, anyways, let's just start with, unless you guys want to mention something. Before I get into that though, I want to tell you guys a couple of scenarios. So we had I've been mentioning this off and on for like 6 months now, and one of my subscribers was so willing to fight the debt collection law firm uh, in a case where he was sued by the bank for a credit card debt that he didn't want to pay, and so here's what he did. He sued the law firm, not the credit card company, because you can't sue the credit card company in this way. Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, you have to sue the law firm, which is a debt collector, and the attorney, which is a debt collector. And so he had two of them. He had the law firm and the attorney that was involved in that case in the state court. He sued them both in the federal court. Now, I just sued him for $4,000, probably more, but he chose to just go into the federal statute and he sued each of them for $1,000. That's as much as you can do in that situation. And he ran that case for about 6 months, and we had just kind of a fun time with it. It was exhausting, he'll tell you. But in the end, it's what happened is what I told him what's going to happen. And so the lawyers got embarrassed, okay, and we got them to the point where they had to identify their liaison at the bank who supposedly transferred the file to the law firm. Remember, I always talk about jurisdiction, origin, where did this whole matter start? I didn't talk about how much money, if the bill was correct or not. I'm not talking about that. I was talking, my argument is that the law firm was misrepresenting, not the law firm, the attorney who was working for the law firm was misrepresenting in the state court the party who had the real interest in the case. He was representing the bank. And my argument was that's an unfair and deceptive collection practice in violation of the FDCPA, because the law firm is the debt collector who all the interest in the case, in the debt. If there is a debt, even if I'm not talking about if there is a debt. I'm just saying, you said there's a debt, lawyers. You said there's a debt, and I'm going to say, okay, if there's a debt, the bank doesn't care about it. And you're coming into the court telling the judge that you represent the bank's interest, and you're lying. This is at least grounds for disbarment, but we can get them under the FDCPA. And the reason why we do that is because if you bring up this argument in the state court, the judge will ignore it. He's going to help them. But if you sue them in the federal court, it's a different world. So we sue them in the federal court, and they fight it. They were fighting it. That they probably spent $15,000 to fight this. They're idiots. And even the judge, he was actually kind of like guiding them in the court. At one of the hearings, he was saying, "You guys need to make this go away," because all they had to do was pay him $2,000, and he would leave them alone. And so, anyways, they get to the point of the judge said you have to identify who transferred the file, because you have to leave it open for the plaintiff here to investigate whether or not the bank actually had an interest. And when the judge ordered that, the next thing I hear from the client is, "Hey, they're offering to settle." And I said, "That's nice. Make sure that they admit liability, and make sure you get the full amount allowed by the statute. Don't settle for less, because it's only $2,000. And that was the full amount. And they did admit liability. And so he's going to take his money and let him be. And I think what's going to happen is, because the law firm itself truly owns the account, they're never going to come back on him. They're never going to try this again. Even if the bank did, even if I'm wrong, do you think that bank is going to hire another law firm or an attorney, and he's going to look at the record and say, what happened before? We don't want to go against this guy. So it's just another example, right? So we can probably look at his credit and probably dial that back and remove some items or whatever, but he won the case and he's getting a couple of thousand out of them.
Does
All
that
right.
law firm attorneys have right of agency from the credit card company?
If they can establish it, that's what we were challenging.
Okay.
That's what we got when we got to that moment where they realized they had to tell the truth.
Would you
They didn't want
explain
to talk
right of
about it.
agency, John? Would you explain it?
Yeah. So the right of, so if the lawyer comes into the state court and says, I'm representing Citibank, and he actually has a retainer agreement with Citibank, and Citibank still owns the account, and Citibank still wants the money and is going to pay the lawyer to go collect the money, that's nothing wrong with that. But my argument was that it wasn't happening. That what was happening is that this law firm, not the attorney, made a deal to acquire a portfolio from the bank. And this guy's case was part of that portfolio, and acquired that portfolio as a debt collector, and lied to the judge and said that the attorney was representing the bank's interest when the bank had no interest. His employer had the interest. The lawyer's employer had the interest. The law firm did. Remember, law firms cannot practice law.
Right.
I love saying that.
Yeah.
So the attorney, can represent the bank, but the fact is he should have been representing the law firm, and they don't want to do that. They don't want to say they're a debt collector. So we went into Fed court and said, yeah, you're a debt collector, and we want to talk to the liaison at the bank and ask him what the details were of the assignment. And I told my client, I said, yeah, that's your agency, right? And I said,
Assignment.
don't ask for the retainer agreement. Just ask for the identity of the liaison at the bank. We'll get what we want with him. We don't need it, because if you ask for the retainer agreement, they're going to say attorney-client privilege. So he went and asked for the retainer agreement. And they said attorney-client privilege. And you know what the judge said? It's okay. They can be required to produce it. I was shocked. And so,
Wow.
yeah, so the judge said, I can require them to produce it if you'll sign a confidentiality agreement. He said, yeah, sure. So that's when they got scared. Yeah. So we were challenging the agency of the lawyer to proceed in behalf of a bank that has no interest in the case. And you're going to probably find that over 90% of your debt collection cases are like that.
Mhm.
Probably more, probably all of them are like that. It's just because of the way they do business, right?
Right. So the bank wasn't saying, we're looking for somebody to go, we want to assign you the rights so that you can go
Yeah.
and get this money.
The bank wrote it off. The bank got
Yeah.
compensation for the tax system
They were already settled.
and
Mhm.
doesn't care anymore. And the law firm is, whatever. I don't know why they do it that
Controlling
way,
the
but anyways, they
portfolio.
got caught.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got caught. So anyways, that was really cool. So anyway, he's
Yeah.
done with that. He beat him. He's getting his money. And so then there's another a quick one where so this couple's daughter had, I think she had a stroke or something, and she incurred brain damage, and she needs to be in a conservatorship. She needs someone to care for her for the rest of her life, and so she's not competent, is what I'm getting at. And she had received funds from some source. It was not a lot of money, but it was in the thousands, tens of thousands, and she can't take that money without court approval. So that brings in the lawyers and the courts, and then it exhausts all the money, and then they would just be losing money. So you have a choice. Do I just forget about it, or the lawyer's just going to take all the money? So I said, well, here's a quick fix. First of all, the bank doesn't get to tell you what to do with your property. They think they can. So instead, what you do is you set up a limited liability company and use her exact legal name, comma LLC, and then the check is made to her. And so they had this check, and it was even endorsed. We had to cross out the endorsement and put a new one, and which I had him do. So we set up the company, endorsed the check, put it in the bank took it, and then wanted to hold the money. Then he called me on the phone like a week later, said, they're holding the money. I said, well, I know they do this. So just hang in there for a bit, go into the bank and be polite and ask to speak to the manager and complain and say it's not fair. And you know that they're using your money and they're lying about the need to hold it. There's no need to hold it. He goes, okay. So he did that, and they released part of the money. And then a few days later, they just released all of it because, so, you got to speak for yourself sometimes. Don't just cry about something. Go do something and have a good reason, go in there and say, hey, that's my money. Do you have a good reason to hold it other than you're stealing the value of it? I know what you're doing. So give it up. You've had it long enough. Do it to somebody else, not me, and so be that loud, that loud customer. So anyways, he sent me an email the other day and said, yeah, it worked. I got the money. Yay. So that's just one example of, we use an LLC to handle property, and we don't need permission to go to we have to go to the court and get permission from a judge to tell the bank to do it when it's not us because we're the property owner. It's ridiculous. So we just trick them, kind of. It's a legal process. We're not tricking them. We're just using a method that they'll recognize. Yeah. So anyways, so let's look at this. If you guys want to ask me on that. Oh, somebody's got a hand up. Oh, D, what'd you want to ask on that? Did you want to make a
Yeah,
comment or something?
the LLC, the name, and then your name, and then the LLC in it to cash a check. I had thought about it. I know some friends who did that. But my question is, being in California, is that could we do it just like our other maybe in New Mexico or another more friendly?
Yeah, just use another
Okay.
state. You can also use a trust. You can have like the person's name, comma, trust. You can just call the trust her
Yeah.
name. And then the father can be, in her case, the father can be the trustee. That would work too.
Okay.
That's a little more risky, meaning you might get more scrutiny. But in LLC, no, they're not going to scrutinize that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, good
Thank you.
question. So, but anyways, all right, so let's look at this. So this Genius Act, it does a few things. Let me go over this here. So the Genius Act is this, what do they call it? Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act. So it opens the door for people to get a banking license because these programmers created a stablecoin. It also allows the banks to issue stable coins. and that you gives you a regulatory framework within which to administer that. And it also, I think, gives you credibility. There's a lot of things. It opens the door for a lot of things. I believe it also is going to bring, as if it hasn't already, what we've done already sort of has brought cryptos into the mainstream. But this law, I believe, is going to be the beginning of just making cryptos mainstream. Now, I have caution on that because you can have all kinds of evilness. I don't want to get into too far on that. You can have all kinds of evilness when you have this type of money. But what's nice about the Genius Act is that the Federal Reserve is precluded from collecting your data because they're using these coins, okay, stable coins or whatever. So the Congress stuff and said to the Federal Reserve Bank, stay out of it. We know what you're thinking, the mark of the beast sort of thing. The Congress said, no, not going to have it. Right. That's summary, easy consumer way of saying it. So I'm just going to go through this list here. There's some pretty good commentary on it. Let's see here. Seal of approval. So yeah, it gives it more marketability. The stable coins, it puts it into a regulatory framework. It puts it under the regulatory framework of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the OCC. This is the United States. Now, I believe each state has its own OCC, but this is Fed, okay? And then let's see what else. You can check it out. There's more details, but there's a bigger framework. They're looking at a bigger framework, but we're going to need more. This is the beginning, okay? There's going to be more legislation on this, so maybe you want to pay attention to it. You're going to see the pricing of coins affected by the legislation, so that's probably a good thing in many cases. But I think in the end, I mean, I've seen people are using, they think they're using a DeFi wallet, which they probably are, but they're trying to avoid like their name associated with the cryptos because they don't know too much about how the system works. So they're afraid they don't want their name associated with the cryptos. So they go to a DeFi wallet and then find out that they're being charged these enormous fees to move money around, or they're not getting access to their money. And so your biggest enemy is going to be these DeFi wallets. It's like almost like stealing from the bank robber, right? They treat you like, well, you must be doing something illegal, so we can do it to you, So the DeFi wallets, I think, kind of backfire on some people. But anyways, this framework, I think, is going to help that. I'm optimistic there. And then financial regulators take on new responsibilities. So yeah, the OCC is what I was mentioning. And bankers, they're probably not going to like this too much, but what does this do when you have more banking facilities? I like to call it banking facility. What happens when you have suddenly many more banking licenses, banking facilities? What happens to the banks?
It'll have to be more competitive.
They lose their monopoly, right? Somewhat. Still, the government is more the monopolist, but the banks don't have their corner of the market. It's being shared now by people who are not bankers. So probably the only detriment that they're going to face in the early days is that they're not going to have access to the intellectual property and the trade secrets known as actuarials that the banks have acquired for the last 250 years.
Right.
Banks and insurance, right? And I think you're going to see something come in there with cryptos being used in the insurance industry, just because insurance is a banking, function. It's going to be interesting. So traditional players weigh stablecoin adoption. So anyways, JP Morgan Chase wants a piece of it and all this. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's very good. I'm very happy to see this at least in the short term. We got to keep our eye on this though, because that you can do a lot of things with this. I mean, think about it like this. If you guys are concerned about AI, imagine AI devices creating their own economic system, paying each other for doing things. What could that be? Use your imagination there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be interesting. But anyways, not too much more on that. I don't want to go I like this 1099 DA. I want to talk about this. Does anybody have did I miss anything on this Genius Act? Did you read this and get anything out of it? Anything more that I'm talking about? Any evilness do you see in there? It's all good, right? I haven't seen the statute yet. It's not codified yet. It's just an act of Congress. Okay. It's on the books. It's done. It'll be codified, and then you'll have the OCC start writing regulations, and if you want to follow it, where do you go? Federal Register under the OCC promulgating rules, regulations, and forms for under the Genius Act. If you want to follow it, Federal Register. Let me just, okay, I'm going to do a screen share here because I need to get back in. So let me go over to the 1099 DA. Okay. So you can see, I just read some commentary from that I found, it was comprehensive, so I picked it. Now, if I look at this, here's your 1099 DA. And of course, the IRS wants to talk about it. You can see the URL. You guys see the URL, right? You can go find it. Notice how it's the irs.gov. You want to go there. You can click on the links here and see more about it, but you see where the copy A, copy B, when you're dealing with this, as you know by now, the exchanges, or where there's large, let's say more than 50 users of an exchange or something like that, where 1099s are going to be issued, they will be issued by email. It's required by regulation. I forget which one, 6050 or something like that. But anyway, so just know that if you get a 1099 DA, it's going to be by electronic means, by email. So just be aware of that. And then here's what we're looking at. So there's you know, this, let's see here, this red one. What's this one for? This goes to the IRS. Then you got this one here. Copy 1 for the state tax department. Let's not leave them out. All right. And then you've got one for you, the recipient, the one who received the money or who they're claiming is receiving the money. And then you've got your instructions. So let's go over this. So let's just look at the one that we're supposed to get. Now, this is almost the same as, you know, everyone, you know, all the other ones. I think it's word for word the same. You can go check 12B. Yeah, pretty much. But one of the things, so let's look at this. So notice how there's a checkbox here, void and corrected. So they're making a provision for a 1099 report that's now void.
Mhm.
Like, for example, I've done many where I do a letter ruling. That's not a letter ruling, and it's a request for a determination letter from the IRS, and I'm basically saying that the 1099 in the case where a person didn't actually sell the coins for dollars from the exchange, but he got a 1099 because he was trading it back and forth. I basically tell the IRS that 1099 is void. I don't use that language. I say that it's going to be, I tell them it's going to be excluded from the 1040. And then the response of the IRS is, okay. That's basically what it says. So the other word for that is that it was void. Okay. It's void because it doesn't report a gain that the IRS needs to care about. Okay. So it's interesting that this is the top of the form. And then you've got here, there's a way that you can have something corrected, which is unusual because I've seen where the regs and the policies are that the issuer of the 1099 is not the party to go to make a correction. Although it looks like here, you could probably have it corrected. I haven't tried that yet, but it's interesting that it's on the form. Now, like I've been telling people for years, there's sometimes when you don't have a tax liability, a duty to file a return. There are sometimes when you don't have a duty to file a return. Now, let's just say I'm talking about a 1040 and the only income item is on this 1099 DA. Let's just say that, okay, make it simple. So there's a question of whether or not you need to file a return. Then there's a question of whether or not it's taxable. So, yeah, everybody I talk to, they're telling me all over the world, all over the country, all over the internet, all the lawyers are saying it's always taxable. My account's always taxable. Always file a return. All right. I say, not necessarily true. Well, here's what the IRS says about that. This is important tax information, and it's being furnished to the IRS. If you are required to file a return, if you are, then it could be a negligent penalty imposed if it turns out that the IRS says, yeah, you should have been filing a return, right? But there's a question as to whether or not you're required to file, number one, and then the other one here, it kind of, you know, it begs the question, if the income is taxable, It's what I've been saying. It's not always taxable, and it's not, that doesn't always create a duty to file. You've heard me on that one before, but it's interesting how the IRS is saying this right here. It lets you know that there are situations where there's not a taxable and there's no return required when it comes to this form. Now, if you get this form and you sold some, I would say that it needs to be correct. And you had a W-2, right? Okay, file your 1040, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying getting those forms requires you to file. I'm just saying what everyone else will tell you, an accountant will tell you, okay? Now, look over here, you'll see there's a spot for a CUSIP number. CUSIP, probably Ray knows what that is. I forget, it's like this long acronym. It has to do with securities. Identifying securities, okay? In many cases, it won't apply to most of us that are dealing with cryptos. Like, for example, on the exchanges, Kraken and Coinbase and all that, probably doesn't apply to us. But notice how you give out your tax number and it's going to be used on this form. So what kind of tax number do you want to give out? I would suggest use, an LLC with an EIN. That's what that means here, recipient's TIN. You want to have the filer here is going to be the reporting company like Coinbase. The recipient is going to be the account holder and his tax number. Now, what's interesting is, I don't even know, maybe y'all can inform me on this one, but generally when you're dealing with third parties that are going to do these reports, you don't just have one digital asset, you have many. And so I don't know why they have this box 1B, name of digital asset. What if you have 4? I don't know, because this 1099 is going to be for the entire account. It's not going to be for one coin, I think. So if you think I don't understand that correctly, let me know. That. Let's see what else. Then so here, what?
Dang.
So here we have on box 5, you see, check if loss is not allowed based on amount in 11. Okay, but here, 6, gain or loss. Is it a short-term gain, a long-term gain, or ordinary? I don't even know what those mean. Those accounting terms. But what's a gain? A gain is not an increase in value. A gain includes the fact that you disposed of the property and that you no longer care about it. You no longer have the beneficial interest. You disposed of it for something else of value. The IRS wants to tax the thing of value in dollars. So if you sold your Bitcoin and it gained in value, and then you sold it and made, let's call it a profit, then you would start looking at short-term, long-term, and all those things. And they want more detail and all this sort of thing. But so what? The 1099 DA is basically reporting and collecting the same information that was done on all the other 1099s, whatever they were using before. Get 1099 what? K or something, INT or something.
So John, are you able to
And
determine
now
whether
there's,
it's for each coin? A 1099 for each coin?
yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure on that one because this 1099 is for an entire account that's going to have many coins. So I'm not sure
So John,
what this 1B is.
you
Yeah.
know what you mentioned a minute ago, it's interesting too. So forms, the Federal Register. So it's a little different than the regulations under Title V, but what it happens is the forms are promulgated through the OMB, like you say.
Yeah.
And so that OMB number, which I can't see, my stuff's hiding it, whatever it is. Oh yeah, there it is, 1545-2330. So when they promulgate it, it's shown in the Federal Register what this form applies to.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is I went and did it with the 1040, 1545-0074.
Yeah.
And it points to investment companies, option
Dividends. Right.
for the 1040, nothing to do with income tax, wages.
That's your regulatory provision for the form. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So sometimes it's not even the form. The Federal Register will show that the form is not being applied to what we're being told. As
Now notice, that's a good point. Now notice what this form is looking at here. Isn't that what? A dollar sign or the sign for the Federal Reserve note? Okay. It's not anything else. Only dollars are being taxed. So what if you're dealing in cryptos and you never go into dollars? You can't even use this form.
So would you say, John, that this form is only for when you sell your crypto for cash?
Of course it is. It's always been that way.
Taxable event. Okay.
There is no such thing as an unrealized gain. If I say realized gain, that's redundant. If I say unrealized gain, that's a contradictory phrase. Both words can contradict each other. No such thing as an unrealized gain. It's either a gain or it's not. So they're taxing dollars. How do I know? Well, it says right here on the form. They want to know the dollar, the dollar, the dollar, the dollar. And what's the bottom line here? Dollars, dollars. How can they get the dollars? You're not required to go get some dollars. You're not required to dispose of your property so you can come up with some dollars. You're not required to do that. So that's why I say the tax liability doesn't come in until, assuming that you have a tax liability, it doesn't come in until you dispose of the property, the virtual currency, in exchange for dollars.
Okay.
Now, there could be some exception to this. It's not an exception, but look at the Barter Club rules. I think it's Circular 519. But if you use Bitcoin, for example, to let's say you sell your car for Bitcoin, and somehow the IRS finds out, or you report it, or let's say here's what the IRS would say on that transaction. It would say that at the moment of the transaction that day, Bitcoin was worth so many dollars, and therefore the dollar value of that transaction was X, and therefore you must pay tax on that. They can do that. I'm not going to argue with them on that one. That's just a rule that's been around for a long time. All right. So, but this really underscores what I've been saying for many years.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's actually quite helpful. This form is actually quite helpful. It's kind of nice to see this. It's not a problem as people say. I don't know about NFTs so much. I'd have to look more at this. I can tell you that when people are doing staking, I always ask, what's your contract written in? What does the contract look like? What are you getting out of the staking? Are you getting the coin you're staking, or are you getting dollars for it? And I think almost always they're getting the coin they're staking. That is not taxable. You might get a 1099, but that's not going to be a taxable item. That's not the trading. That's like, it's a dividend, let's say, but it's not, because dividends are taxable, but it's not a dividend, but it works like a dividend. It's still not taxable.
Mm.
All right. So it's just the same thing. Like, this whole phrase underscores everything. So where I would tell the IRS in a request for determination letter, I would just say, I would make a legal argument. I would say, the exchange was the trustee the whole time. The exchange was the owner of my coins the whole time. I say my coin, but the exchange was the owner, making it the trustee of my property while I maintain the beneficial interest. I'm the holder at Coinbase, but yet when I'm trading coin for coin, the private keys are never changing. The coins are still held in the same private key owned by the exchange. So the exchange was the trustee. It doesn't have a tax liability either. And the coins are not changing hands. What's happening is the exchange has software that shows that you did the trade, but the ownership hasn't changed. It's not until that you take the money, the coins off of the exchange, or that software is going to then change the private keys. Okay. So that when I tell the IRS that, and I also tell the IRS what I'm going to do or not do, I tell the IRS, I'm not going to include this 1099 on my 1040 because it's erroneous. And then some cases I have to say, it's not erroneous for 20% of the money because I did take that money out and I did include that on my 1040, but I'm not including this 1099. And in every single case, the IRS said in so many words, yeah, good, fine. 22 times at least, I think, something like that. Yeah. So nothing to be scared of there. Did I miss anything? You guys probably know some more about this than I do.
So he was asking
kind of-
about a QSIP number on there.
Yeah, they have a spot for a QSIP number right here.
Who
You see?
puts that in?
I guess if it's being treated as, if it has a QSIP number, I think some coins have QSIP numbers.
Because that stands for the Committee for Uniform Securities Identification Procedures. It's got to do
Yes.
with securities.
QSIP numbers identify securities.
Court cases have QSIP numbers, you know that?
Yeah, that's true.
I
They are
think
QSIP numbers.
some cryptos are considered securities. And
Correct.
but not all of them.
Correct. Most are not, but also those that may not be could be considered securities if they're used in that way. under the rules that the SEC has. And I have my take on the SEC because I think the SEC is partly designed to prevent the consolidation of capital. They don't want the little get together with his friends and put together. So you have the SEC involved, it makes it more difficult to do that. Karen,
Could
what do
you
you think?
repeat that? Could you repeat that? You kind of broke up there.
The SEC, in my opinion, partly is its intention is to prevent the consolidation of capital.
And what does that mean? Does that mean doesn't want you to make money, basically?
Well, okay, let's say I do something wacky like this. Let's say I get the bright idea to hold the title of my home that I live in a company, a C corp, and then I issue 1 million shares, and I write up all the share certificates. I do everything correctly. I do all the accounting, and I sell shares in my house because that will help compensate me for paying for the house, right? If I sell shares in my house, and when the value goes up or the dollar goes down or whatever, and I sell my house, the shareholders get liquidated, they get their money, right? But I can't do that. It's illegal. What that would allow me to do is if I do that on a larger scale, I could consolidate enough money to do something substantial inside the economy. They want to monopolize the people that are doing those things in the economy, make it hard for us to do that. To
So
get
they
the
don't
small
want you to
guys,
make
small money.
money, basically. They don't
Well,
want you
they
to
don't
make
want the
money.
small guys to get together and act like a big guy. They don't want,
Yeah,
50 of us to get together and act like BlackRock.
right.
That's partly what the SEC is doing.
I think Trump just appointed a new SEC guy,
Okay,
and I don't know much about him, but he's probably better than what was there before, because I
probably.
think it was SEC that was overseeing or allowing the manipulation of gold and silver, so that
It's possible. Yeah,
they
they could be doing some
they
sinister
can't.
things.
I can't remember the previous guy's name, but he was really bad.
Yeah, I don't follow it too much, but yeah, it's likely. I kind of Trump's first term, I thought he kind of like let the banks do what they want, but I think this time he's got some better plans. So
Hey, John, can you talk about, it's talking about those things out there. What is the IRA? What's the advantage to IRAs?
the IRAs
Kind
and
of thing on it.
401ks, yeah,
Okay.
I love to bash those. That's another example. So when I talk about the SEC in that capacity, so I look at it like whenever you have investment funds, I'm sorry, pension funds. Think about it. If you have a pension fund and you put some money aside from your paycheck and it's making money. So maybe that pension fund is being invested on Wall Street somewhere. Maybe it's being invested in asset-backed securities. Who's doing that? Well, somebody is doing that to your fund. You're not. You're going to get the benefit of it. Your fund may go up in value. But what's happening is you're letting someone else invest your money. I say gamble with your money. So that way, the person gambling with your money is not risking his own money. What better way to get capital out of the marketplace than to go to people that are working in real jobs and promise them a tax break 40 years from now? They think that's a good idea. Yeah, and we'll use your money now. Pay no attention to what we're doing with it. Your IRA is going to go up in value over the years, and it typically did. But what's happening is the value of the increase of your IRA, you're going to get a windfall at some point. Maybe that's exciting. But what's happening is over the life of the account, the pension, you're missing opportunity that you could have had you had control of your money. So they're also taking us out of the equation. They're taking us out of the opportunity that they want. They meaning the Wall Streeters. That's just like a real simple version of it. So
All the while, the value of the money is going down. So
it's
they're
going
taking
down,
it
right?
from you while it's
Right.
worth something, and then when they give it back to you, it's worth bupkis.
And yeah, and there are some examples where some people do kind of get ahead, but for the most part, no, it's not for getting ahead at all. And it's promising you some ridiculous benefit because you don't know how to get it otherwise. They're promising it to you, and in order to get it, you have to follow all these rules, and you have to wait for a long time, so that you don't have a chance to use that money until you're too old to really use that money. So it's really sinister.
And it also limits their competitors.
Thank you. That's exactly what they're doing. Yeah, limit the competition. I mean, there's plenty of examples of this limiting competition in the market. Think about money.
Mhm.
You know, they don't want people to know about money. They don't want people to understand about the time value of money and net present value and all these things. You would then questioning what the bank's doing with its interest rate, and you would never want to pay off a debt early, a large debt early, especially. Karen, I don't want to skip you. What did you want to ask me something or say
Oh,
something?
well, just what you were, I'll go back to the 1099, but yeah, most people that have IRAs with their company, which is probably not most of the people here, and you can roll over an IRA into like an IRA where you can control it, and you can even invest in real estate.
Self-directed.
I know, yeah, self-directed.
And
Most
that's still
people,
under the IRA, and it does give you more control. It's good. I do have some of my clients doing that as well. But you're still under the IRA, but you now have control of the money. So you
yeah.
can get into real estate and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, that's actually pretty good if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But going back to the 1099 DA, so let's say you do get a 1099 from an exchange, but it's just an erroneous one where you were trading between coins and they sent it to you. So and you file a 1040, do you ignore the 1099 or do you somehow explain it on your 1040? Like, do you ignore it and wait for them to bring it up for you? Like,
Okay, there's two ways of doing it. I like to do it that way. 99.9% of and I say I've done before, okay, before cryptos, my clients were getting 1099s for not paying credit card debt, but that was erroneous because there was no 1099 issue because of the way it wasn't paid. It was wrong. But what I had my clients do is exclude it. I mean, we're not going to ignore it, but we're not going to report it. We're not going to exclude it. We're not going to factor it. We're going to exclude it. We're not going to factor it into the 1040. And that worked perfectly. It doesn't have there's not a tax situation. Now, you can have a tax situation on a debt that you don't pay if you try to do a settlement or if you're solvent in that tax period and the IRS even seen that one. Now, that's my
wait,
way of
can
doing
you
it. One of my
repeat that?
clients who
Yeah, you broke up on that. So, if you were solvent and then the IRS, and I missed what you said
if
after
you were
that.
solvent during that tax
Ugh.
For God's sake, like-
period, the 1099, if you did a settlement and you didn't follow through on it, the IRS could tax you on that 1099. So there are some conditions. If you're insolvent, which is you can probably show that for almost everybody. That's how I got out of some of those over the years, is showing the client was insolvent when we had to talk to the IRS. That's a rule that IRS follows, and so the IRS will then ignore the 1099. But what I've done over the years for debt collections is ignore the 1099, exclude it from the 1040. In this case, so far, when I first started looking at this in 2018 or 2017, I was doing a request for determination letter and I was getting the IRS to agree with me. And then the client was excluding that 1099 as being erroneous. But I don't think the office at the IRS that did the determination letter was talking to the other part of the IRS that deals with 1040s. I just think the IRS was looking at that as a 1099 that should have been ignored. So the IRS is already doing it, I think. And so I've always done it that way. Never had a problem. So if it's erroneous, the whole thing's erroneous, ignore it. If you have a problem with IRS, let's say they want to bring it up, right? Let's say it's an audit, right? You would just go into the discussion about when there was a gain. Any of those transactions constitute a gain, and you'll be fine. The examiner will agree with you. You'll see. So far, I haven't had that. That's not even come up. I haven't had any situations like that.
Or
Now,
there's no cash distributed, which is the same argument.
disposition of property
Yeah,
where there's
right.
a gain. Yeah, if it's not a gain by by the IRS definition, then there's nothing to be concerned about there. And the fact that the exchange is the owner of the coins the whole time, no matter which coins you're swapping back and forth between, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what coin you're having and what coin you're trading for, okay? Because you put cash into property, then you took cash out of the property. You took your property was expressed in some other property, and then you took it back out as cash. When you take it out as cash, then they can talk about it. So if you had more cash now than before, this coin and that coin, and then you trade for this coin and that coin, none of that matters. They're missing the whole point. That's why when I hear accountants talk about, I'm a crypto accountant, I used to just say, I tell my client, run far and fast. He's an idiot. Yeah.
Right.
And so I think Jim wanted me to mention he was reading somewhere. Maybe you can tell me, Jim.
You're breaking
But,
up real bad, John. We're all missing about half of it.
okay. Well, I'll just repeat it. Jim was mentioning that he was reading somewhere some rhetoric on the internet where the government was going to capture and confiscate or take people's 401ks or something. Did I say that right, Jim?
Yes.
And, okay. And so that's just stupidness. That's not going to happen. They're not going to do that. Why? It's already taken for what I just explained. The purpose of the 401k is to take your money. If you understand what I'm talking about, okay? So why would they actually take it and piss you off and then risk being sued and all kinds of drama? Why? They're not going to do that. They already have it. Anyways, that's my logic on it. All right, so I just want to cover that because none of y'all should be afraid of the 1099 DA. In fact, I think it's very helpful. And if you hear this conversation or you get into these conversations, tell them, educate people, say, stop the insanity. You guys, this is the same. What more information can you get? It's already been collected on you and being reported. And so what? It doesn't matter. The 1099 does not create a tax liability. You're creating the tax liability by filing a tax return. Kind of. I mean, you're not really doing that, but that's what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into that technical subject too.
So when you're buying
So, yeah.
cryptos, you're putting cash into property. And then when you take the cash back out, you're just taking the cash out of the property. It's like you buy a house.
Yeah, and your cash
appreciates.
is your property also, but it's taxable because it's legal tender. But yeah, you can acquire other property, and it doesn't matter what kind of property it is. But if you dispose of that property for cash again, now we can factor in the cost basis, right? In fact, I'll just mention this way back in 2018 or so. I did this a few times. I was explaining about when you're doing this, you treat your crypto exchange, let's say Coinbase, as a black box. The cash goes in and then the cash comes out. That's all we care about. It doesn't matter what you're buying with it because you're buying property, then more property, different property, that property, this property. It doesn't matter. It never goes back to dollars until you've that final moment. And so what happens if I put in, $10,000 and then I put in the 10,000, I stair step it in, right? Over a period of time, right? I put a little bit of time. So now I'm changing the time periods, right? And then I take it out over time. I'm changing the time periods. How do I factor in my cost basis? Well, there's one simple algebraic equation, basic algebra, that you can use for each aspect, each amount of money going in and coming out. So you can use this algebra for anything. And I did the equation. It's a very simple equation, but it looks ugly, but it's the same thing over and over again. So the more transactions you do, the more calculations you have to do. And I know it's annoying, but that is the correct way to figure out your cost basis if you'd like to deal with this property in your name. If you want to go through all that, I like to just use an LLC, get my 1099 and move on with my life. So y'all can do what you want. Teresa?
Okay. Now I want another question after you just said that, but I'll go to my first question. We were talking yesterday about the selling silver that's in an IRA and putting it in the LLC.
Okay,
Is that right? I can still put it in the LLC?
you can.
Okay, even if I sell a big portion, you just said stair step, and I was thinking, would that be better to sell little by little to get what
Well, first of all, if you're gonna sell you're gonna dispose of property in your IRA for something else for cash, it's still under the IRA. So just follow those rules.
Yeah, you said that, but I'm talking about taking the silver and turning it into crypto.
Okay. You want to trade your crypto, your precious metals for crypto,
Cryp-
right?
Yeah, buy crypto. So sell silver, buy crypto, but it's coming out of an IRA, so I would want it to go into the LLC or into a self-directed IRA.
Okay, if you're gonna take it out of the IRA, you're gonna have to pay the tax on it if it's an IRA to get it out. So it's after tax money. Unless you do that, you gotta follow the rules. It's still under the IRA.
Okay, well, we talked about this yesterday. I thought to avoid that 1099 tax event that coming out of the IRA, we would put it into the LLC or another IRA.
You could do either, but I don't know what the accounting is on that.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
said
know if
that
you get a
yes-
1099 for, because it's still in the IRA. I'm not sure you're gonna get a 1099. I don't know how they do the accounting on that.
Yeah, so you said yesterday to go ahead and just look at what the IRA, what kind of I have a traditional IRA.
Uh-huh. Check the rules. I don't know. Maybe talk to an accountant because I couldn't tell you. It's not my area, ironically. But
Okay.
here's what I recommend. Do what you think is going to make better use of your money.
Mm-hmm.
The tax consequence should be last. Make money with your money or do something that you need to do. But at the same time, you can also consult with an accountant. He'll tell you when is it outside the IRA? When do you not have to, follow the rules? That's what you want to ask them. How do I get out from under that if that's what you want to do?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. I noticed there's 57 new messages. Is there? Am I going to be able to? Okay, just comments here. Okay.
It's a lot of comments. I haven't really seen
That'd be nice if you see a good one in there. I don't want to miss,
questions.
if it's a good one.
Well, do you want to deal with the Catherine Austin Fitz thing?
Yeah, what is she talking about?
Okay, she just talked about the 401k changes coming with
Okay.
John Titus on her site. And apparently it has something to do with, it's a way to deal with private equity and more ways to drain pension accounts. So I guess
Private equity where?
asking you to comment on that.
Private
Pat-
equity where?
Tanya, can you just speak about it? Your question? Maybe not. Okay. Tanya's just saying that Catherine Austin Fitz just talked about the 401k changes coming. And the talk had something to do with private equity and more ways to drain pension accounts. That's the comment, but I don't really know if there's a question there or if
I'd have to read the whole article. I don't know.
yeah, so
Drain pension accounts. That sounds pretty scary.
yeah.
I think she's just talking about, I don't know. I'd have to see the whole article. I like her material. She's got some
Yeah.
good information. Yeah. She
Okay,
knows a
so
lot more than she's talking about.
yeah, would you answer the question, when the crypto exchange asks you to provide the source of your wealth, how do you answer that question?
That's a bullshit question, but you got to give them something, right? I say give them something that's plausible. It's my savings. I've been saving a long time for that. Or my Uncle Bob. He's a nice guy. So yeah, you give them a plausible whatever, because it's bullshit. What business is it of theirs? But you can't tell them that because they won't open the account, but give them something plausible without giving them too much, So you got to try to answer the questions so they don't ask you more questions. I hate to say.
Mhm.
This is
That's
Tanya. I can,
usually
sorry,
what I'm trying to
I
do.
figured out how I could talk. Should I
Yeah, go ahead,
speak?
Tanya.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
I was just right before your call going through our money markets for this week, and that was the first time I had heard about it with 401ks. Totally out of the blue, but she's, always very concerned and watchful about the raping from the private equity. And this was another way in, and then it, another way into the pension accounts. I just heard it, so I don't have it locked into my head yet, but that was something to pay attention to. It sounded
She
like.
has a really more educated commentary than I would say. I keep things very simple, so she knows way more than I would ever know. But I'm just saying I think
Yeah.
those pension funds are intended to keep your money out of play. Or let the people that want to gamble with someone else's money do that very easily. So she's probably she would probably agree with me on that, but she has a more technical explanation. So I'd
And,
have to see more of her
and
her
if I
article.
get more better information, I'll pass it along.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
It's the same article that I read.
Okay, good.
So drain your pension, drain your 401k. I don't know what she means by that. I'd have to pass
Yeah,
it over,
me
Jim,
either.
when you get a chance.
All right, we'll do.
This is sort of a outside the box question. Someone's saying, is there a way to get around real ID? And I certainly have, in New York at least, you can use a passport instead, and you can always have your passport as a passport card.
Well, I still don't think there's a way around the real ID because the whole idea about collecting that information is have so many points of data that can be cross-referenced. And now it's so easy to cross-reference data that even if you're going to get around the using your driver's license for something, it doesn't matter because that data is still available with like your name, date of birth, and phone number, right? So that's why a couple of years ago, I started talking about putting, a lien on your data with a security agreement.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah, because
that's the
I don't see a
solution.
way around it, but it is property. And if you describe it, you can make a claim on it.
Right.
And it's, why not make it a licensing agreement?
Yeah, at one point, Ray and I were saying to everybody, like, let's all just do this and do it together.
You really should. Once you
And
have if you have a
generate
nice
your
portfolio of,
groundswell.
if you have a nice portfolio of security agreements on all the property that you're disclosing to everybody, and you write that in such a way that the lien attaches wherever the data goes, well, you got yourself a nice collection of debtors. I mean, it could be worth a lot of money, but I think the power there is in actually just doing it. Just doing it. You don't have to do anything else. Just put the lien on there. Because I think it's going to be show up on their accounting records as a liability that they can't account for that. They can't forecast it. They don't know what to think about it, but it's a liability.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like if you had a house, right, and you have a mortgage, and let's say there's no equity in your house. Let's say you're underwater on the house, right? And then some fool puts a lien on files a mortgage on against your title to your house, right? He just put a claim on your house because he filed a piece of paper in the county recorder's office. It's not going to be sustained, but you could do that, right? When it comes to your property, you can certainly maintain a lien on it and put terms on that lien.
Right.
That's your own piece of legislation, okay, that's enforceable as a matter of law. You can bring it into the courts and enforce it, just like a licensing agreement on intellectual property.
Yeah, and also, for example, Karen just writes something here, like that she just got a letter from her utility company about their most recent data breach. Well, you could take that letter, and if you went into the court of law, say, look, they're having data breaches all the time. Of
Oh,
course
I'm
they
gonna tell you, when it's very clear in your mind that you just gave up data, that's a data breach.
Mhm.
Because data, like you could. I've had people actually, they're in their little brain that's rattling around in their skulls tell me, for your security, we need your date of birth, name, and social security number. And I say, well, can you guarantee that no one else will get that information except you? And they don't know what to say to that.
Right.
And I say, well, if I don't give it to you, wouldn't that prevent the possibility that someone else, and their brain shuts down. They don't know what to say. So the best data security is if I don't give you my data. How about
The
that?
data. Oh my God.
How about if I just have with you, whoever's asking, if I just give you an identifying number that I've created and a fictitious name, and you can identify me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
No, we have to have your real name. Well, then you have a data breach. I had someone at the school and the person's asking for the same information. And so with a straight face, I just said, so what's your data retention policy? What are your safeguards for a data breach? What kind of liability do you have? What kind of coverage do you have for a data breach? Is what I asked him. Now, this person, usually when I ask people that, their brain shuts down. This guy was really smart. He said, he stopped walking. We were walking in the hallway. He stopped and he said, friend, That's a good question. Because he understood what that meant.
Mm.
Because you're guaranteed to have a data breach, and there's a financial liability to the person who suffers from that. And he got it right away. And he couldn't answer me. Of course, I knew he couldn't answer me. It was a rhetorical question. I don't want to, piss the guy off, but I always have to ask. If you're with me somewhere, if y'all are with me somewhere, I'm going to ask people stuff like that. So
I know. I remember like going shopping with you in Florida for food. Everyone gets COVID conversation. Everything.
Oh, please. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I hope that helps y'all, and go ahead and don't, tell people, educate them, go in these groups, go in these forums. So you guys are talking about Harry Potter stuff. Come on. It's not anything different. Don't be scared.
John, I did that security agreement on Google, and it really didn't work out. They won't give me but $100,000.
That's all.
How do you know that?
Oh, gee.
How do you know? I mean, I just don't know I don't know what the limits are. That's why I said, just keep it real low. You don't need big numbers in there. Just put, $24 a year or something like that. The equivalent of 24 or something like that. But put a nice fat penalty clause in there. Big fat one. Yeah. I like to start at $250,000 penalty
More
clause.
people need to do it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Liquidated damages. They
Amazon and
do
Google.
that to us. Yeah, they do that to us. Yeah.
But you just like you tend to blow my mind like at least once a week, if not more often. And when you said that about what if I just don't give you my real name at all?
How about that for data security?
Oh my God. That is it.
My boy's a data breach.
One time I went to just for fun, I went to, what was it? I think I was reserving a room at a hotel. I was with my wife, and she said, "What's your name?" And I said, "John Smith." And she just laughed. Because that's a common name. If you don't want to tell someone your name, you say John Smith. So yeah. Anyways, so that's my take on that. I hope it helps y'all, and pass it along. Look forward to fielding any questions on that. I hope.
Yeah, and it really confirms what you've been saying. I mean,
yeah, it's nice to see this, because look at the commentary in the margin on that form from the IRS. It begs the question, maybe some people aren't required to file, and maybe some people don't have a tax liability.
Yeah.
Even though they got the 1099.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see that in a lot of the IRS regulations and statutes. This is subject to, it's always like any person required. That's what it is. Any person required.
Any person required, exactly.
Yeah.
Years, I first suspected what I know now, but I kept getting confirmations from it's real ID. You're not going to get around it. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go, y'all.
All right.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Excellent.
Appreciate the conversation.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Night.